That was actually when I was in high school. For my Latin class and my English class in 10th grade, I talked both teachers into letting me write a poem about Julius Caesar and the Ides of March. And I wrote this 4 or 5 page long, it was a masterpiece. It took me months. And when I got up in English class, and the last line of the poem was, "Beware the Ides of March." It was all about the assassination of Julius Caesar by Brutus on March 15th, the Ides of March. And I didn't even remember this until almost 2 decades later. But here I was, 15 years old, something like that, 14 years old. And my English teacher said, "Tom, you wrote such a great paper. Stand up in front of the class and read it." So I got up in front of the class, and I read my 4-page poem with a lot of energy. It was a masterpiece. And then the teacher stood up next to me and said, "Class, I would like you all to look at a plagiarist. This is what a plagiarist looks like." And she went off on this rant about how there's no way that I could have written this poem. She couldn't figure out who I stole it from or where it came from, but there's no way I could have written this poem. And I wrote the poem, right? And then she told my Latin teacher, and so both my English teacher and my Latin teacher basically gave me Fs on this assignment. And I was devastated. And I at that point in time, I had 56 rejection slips that I had wallpapered my bedroom with for mostly poetry that I had submitted to magazines around the country, a couple of short stories. And I had actually published one short story in a men's magazine, of all things. But I stopped writing poetry, and I stopped writing poetry. It wasn't until 20 years later. Louise and I were married. It was, I think, our 5th wedding anniversary, and I wrote her a poem for her birthday. Today, by the way, is Louise's birthday. Happy birthday, Louise. And I wrote her a poem for her birthday, and it suddenly hit me that I hadn't written a poem since I was, a teenager, because of that crazy teacher. I mean, anyway, so beware the Ides of March, right? Well, in this case, the Ides of March, March 15th, 2015, the Ides of March will be next week, I guess, next weekend, thereabouts. Today is the 6th, so 8 days from now. That is the day, according to Jack Lew, the Secretary of the Treasury, the guy holding Alexander Hamilton's old job, that is the day that he released today that the U.S. government runs out of money. Because you'll remember back in December, actually it was in February that they passed the law, but in December of last year, or of the year before last, the Treasury Secretary notified Congress, okay, we're gonna run into this wall in February of 2014. And so Congress in 2014 passed what's called the Temporary Debt Limit Extension Act, suspending the statutory debt limit, in other words, allowing the government to continue borrowing money until March 15th. But as Jack Lew says, "Dear Mr. Speaker, beginning on Monday, March 16, the outstanding debt of the United States will be at the statutory limit." On Friday, March 13th, which will be next Friday, that's the second Friday the 13th in a month and a half, isn't it? Because February has 28 days. Okay, you got it. Anyhow, on Friday, March 13th, Treasury will suspend until further notice the issuance of state and local government series securities. And he goes on through this whole thing. So a whole brand new crisis, Republican-created crisis, which brings me to one other thing I wanted to raise, one other question, as it were, and that is, over the last couple of weeks, I've on a number of occasions now when I've had conservatives on our TV show in the evening, I've said, okay, I can give you a long list of things that changes that progressives brought about in the United States. Progressives fought for the American Revolution. Conservatives did not want there to be an American Revolution. Progressives fought against slavery. Conservatives wanted to keep slavery. Progressives fought secession of the Union. Conservatives wanted the Union to secede. In fact, the Confederacy. They were the Confederacy. Progressives fought for Reconstruction. Conservatives fought against it. Progressives fought for an equal place in society for blacks and whites. Conservatives fought against it. Conservatives brought us Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. Progressives fought against that. Progressives fought for women to have the right to vote, to be enfranchised. Conservatives fought it. Progressives fought for the 40-hour work week. First the 50-hour work week. Got that in the 1910s. Got the 40-hour work week in the 1930s. Conservatives fought against it. Progressives fought to end child labor in the United States. Conservatives fought to keep child labor. Progressives fought to have Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Conservatives fought against every single one of those things. Progressives fought to create an agency that would determine whether our food and our drugs were safe, the FDA and the USDA. Conservatives objected to and fought the creation of both those agencies. Conservatives said, we've got to clean up the air. We need an environmental protection agency. Conservatives fought the existence of the EPA. Progressives said, we've got to regulate our banks so that they don't destroy our economy again. Conservatives fought those regulations and said, no, let the banks do whatever they want. All of this kind of adds up to the history, and this, you've heard my rant about this a couple of weeks ago when conservatives were talking about doing away with advanced placement history classes in all these states, that conservatives don't want AP history taught. They don't want American history taught to young Americans because American history is the history, by and large, of progressive change. And at every single junction along the way, conservatives were on the wrong side of history. And so you could easily understand why conservatives would say, no, please don't teach American history. Conservatives did not want, Martin Luther King and friends walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. In fact, they showed up with sticks and stones and tear gas and baseball bats with barbed wire wrapped around them. It was ugly. So the question, and I keep asking conservatives this, I keep saying, can you tell me one thing since the founding of our republic that conservatives have done that has, that is either policy or law that has been, put into place that has actually advanced our republic, that has made America a better place? I have a long list of things that progressives have accomplished. What have conservatives accomplished? Now, typically what they'll say is, oh, well, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. And I say, yeah, but back then the Republican Party was the liberal party. In fact, they were the radical left. They called them the radical Republicans. Google Thaddeus Stevens. The guy who really drove Reconstruction and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, for example. So one of the things that I would love to see an ad, just a generic ad on television that we could run over and over and over again that says, progressives brought you this, and it goes through this long, long list. And then it says, and conservatives brought you this. And it's just like silence. Unless maybe some of our conservative listeners can tell me even one thing conservatives have done.